Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Oregon Housing Stability Council. Glad you're joining us, and we'll give folks a couple of more minutes to come filing into the virtual room, and then we'll start our business agenda for today. Thanks for being here. And now I would like to convene the Oregon Housing Stability Council meeting for August 1st, 2025. Can you believe it's August already? So first up, we have a roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Hall. We do have a couple of council members that have been excused from today's meeting. For the record, Councilmember Willard and Councilmember Farrell have been excused from today's meeting.
Okay.
Councilmember DeFontorum.
Present.
Chair Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Mena.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Meehan.
Here.
Thank you. With 6 council members in attendance, we do have quorum.
Wonderful. Do we have any review or follow-up action items for today?
We do, Chair Hall. One moment, let me bring that up. Okay, we have a couple of updates. 2 are from home ownership from June.
Okay.
One regarding the home ownership development project approvals. It was suggested that it would be helpful to have a definition on how the team defines equity and how they're reflecting it in their work with project sponsors, as well as around lift home ownership unit changes. The question was, what is our position and policy around the prevailing wage issue? There will be updates homeownership will provide in September regarding these 2 things. Last month, regarding the ORCA framework update recommendations, there was a thought that it would be helpful to have someone come in and document the ORCA by comparing to other statewide housing plans and share a high-level update based on a year difference. Natasha and the Affordable Rental Housing Division got feedback from Councilmember Lee regarding the documentation and evaluation of the ORCA and how it's serving to further affordable housing expansion within the statewide housing plan. They appreciate the recommendation and will seek opportunities to support this work externally and commit to ongoing evaluation and documentation, both for current processes, transparency, as well as for reflection and refinement. Around the ARH portfolio operating expense study, there was a request for a copy of the PowerPoint from that presentation that has been provided. And additionally, the whole council will be provided with a copy of the presentation used last month. And additionally, the Affordable Rental Housing Division has published the Affordable Rental Housing Portfolio Financial Reporting Analysis on our OHCS website. And that concludes the updates.
Thanks very much. Well, it's time for the report of the chair. I'll be brief. I was just thinking last evening how to sum up this moment that we're all living in, and I think of that ancient curse, may you live in interesting times. And the one thing I think everybody could agree on about 2025, at least so far, it's been interesting, but our work continues. our momentum continues. We've got another long list of developments we're going to be approving today, considering and hopefully approving, and homes for many, many people and families. And so we charge forward with into the unknown with optimism and hope, as far as I'm concerned. Director Bell, do you have a report today?
Yeah, well, morning, Chair Hall, members of the council. It's good to see you. No specific report, but I will, at the sake of potentially being repetitive ahead of a later presentation, want to take a moment to connect the dots between the forthcoming conversation and presentation that we'll have pertaining to 2025-27 investments and implementation, and in particularly what our thinking and early proposal is for the items in which we want to bring to council and some of the early conversations that we had last month. Once we get through some of the official business that is a little bit more attuned to our monthly, how we spend our time together each month, we're going to sort of pivot and turn and activate perhaps a different part of the brain. Our intention is to cover sort of two things today. Is to one, offer a debrief on the totality of investments and also critical policies that were established in the 2025 session, so that the council has awareness and we can sort of talk you through that beyond just providing a document. Right after that presentation, our intention is to then talk through the pipeline of prioritization and implementation that the department will be using as a blueprint for how we organize our work. And so as part of that, what we've aimed to do is be consistent with what we did last session in terms of creating a specific blueprint for council in terms of items that will be coming in front of the council, both in terms of being able to provide you all with foresight, but also foresight as to whether something is coming in typical form, meaning that we're bringing a framework, we need your feedback, it'll come back for a vote, and areas that present as completely new opportunities, things that don't exist that we need to make exist, and wanting to make sure that we can bring council along early in a lot of that work. So that will be the time that we spend a little later on today in the presentation. There will be no specific and firm decisions that we need to drive to today. Really the place, the primary point of interest is to really to create some space for shared exchange and learning, and then to get any questions or things that the council might be having top of mind in terms of just clarity, so you have what you need to inform what comes next. Of course, this won't be the only time to do that. And then we'll talk through some of the form and function of what we're planning to bring to you when and for what purpose. So appreciate you all in advance for making the time to have some of that more exploratory conversation ahead of getting into all of the forms and functions and details of only voting, which is important, but also misses some of the big opportunities to bring our collective thinking together. So with that, Chair Hall, I will yield and turn it to you for getting us into our business today.
Thank you very much, Director Bell. Okay, first up, we have the Affordable Rental Housing Division's presentation, and we will open a public hearing for comments on these transactions in accordance with ORS 456.561. We have one person who signed up for public comment on these transactions, and that is Valencia Ocampo. Valencia, are you on the line? If so, please use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate you're here. Are we seeing her?
Yes, she was logged on and I gave her permission to talk, and now they are gone.
Oh, okay. Well, let's proceed then with I believe Ty and Roberto are gonna walk us through this. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Chair Hall, Director Bell, and Council. So we have this morning for affordable rental housing, two different slates of project recommendations. And the first up is Chair Hall indicated is tie with our 4% transaction. So I will hand it to him.
Good morning, council members, Chair Hall, Director Bell. For the record, my name is Ty Dunston-Strain, Assistant Director of Production, here to present the Rose Schnitzer Tower Preservation Project for approval. Background on the project. It is a large preservation project of 235 units that includes 233 project-based Section 8 rental assistance units with the project. The development is sponsored by Robinson Jewish Homes and Guardian Development LLC. The project is in Portland. It includes a range of unit sizes from mostly one bedrooms. Actually, all the majority are all one bedrooms, and the conduit bond request is over about 42 million, and the whole total project cost is around over $72 million. Next slide. So the project is sponsored, as mentioned. Guardian Development has in place strategies to work with underserved senior populations, and they have various partnerships with Engage, Cornerstone Communities, and Impact Northwest to provide culturally responsive support to the seniors in place. The project has committed to our MWSB target goals for this project, and it is slated to close this month. And next slide. And with that, I open it up for questions and ask before we consider the motion.
Questions from the council? Not seeing anybody raise their hands. Are we ready for a motion then? Anybody?
I move to approve as requested.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Hall. For the record, Councilmember Lee has joined us. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Chair Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right. Moving right along. Oh, just officially, I should close the public hearing, I believe, at this point, or is it also covering the next set of transactions?
It is also covering this next set
Okay.
of transactions, Chair Hall.
Okay,
Yes.
then let's keep it rolling then.
Keep it open.
Mhm.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. So, I think as you may recall, last month we approved the final framework for the updates to the ORCA to be able to allow the new legislative investments to start flowing through it. And so this next slate of recommendations are the first group of projects that will be moving forward from those legislative investments. And I will, after this, kind of regroup and try to talk a little bit through more about all of those mechanics behind the scenes. But I will, in the meantime, hand it to Amy Cole to talk through this first recommendations from the 25 legislative investments.
Thanks, Natasha. Good morning, Chair Hall, Housing Stability Council members, and Director Bell. I'm Amy Cole, the Assistant Director of Development Resources, and I'm here to present this month's ORCA projects for your consideration. Next slide. Oh, you're already on it. Sorry, thanks. All right. So here, just as I do each time I present, I just give some point in time statistics about where we are for impact assessment, for the impact assessment step for the ORCA. There are 26 projects in impact assessment under review currently, 72 projects altogether in the impact assessment step. That is 49 for-profit-led projects, 42 nonprofit-led projects, 6 housing authority-led projects, and 1 tribal project. All right. And now for the projects for consideration today, there are 9. And we'll go through them one by one. Here's just a list of all of them together. And I will start now just walking through them. The first is Farmdale Apartments, 45 units sponsored by the Marion County Housing Authority. It's located in Woodburn in Marion County. And the request is for $9,570,000 in lift. And just a note, some of these are 4% projects. And when they are, we list the amount that of both 4% low-income housing tax credits that will be requested later, and private activity bonds, also known as PAB. However, Housing Stability Council is not considering approval for those resources today. Today, the resources being considered are the gap financing, so in this case, the lift for the projects. The projects will come back to Housing Stability Council later in the ORCA process for approval of the private activity bond amount. All right, so next slide. So just a little bit about this project. The Marion County Housing Authority is, according to the application, demonstrates a firm commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility through a strategy aimed at fostering inclusiveness both internally and in the communities it serves. In service delivery, the Marion County Housing Authority is focused on reducing barriers to housing service through accessibility, such as multilingual materials, ADA compliance, and mobile services for rural communities. Next slide. All right, the second project is Goose Hollow Lofts, 60 units. It's sponsored by Home Forward, located in Portland in Multnomah County. And the request is for $8,403,816 in lift. This is an acquisition project of market rate housing. So that's just something to that's what makes this project a little bit different than some others that we're talking about today. Home Forward has a development equity framework, which integrates racial equity into all phases of housing development, ensuring that projects are inclusive and culturally responsive. They also collaborate with community partners to design services that address the specific needs of BIPOC communities, ensuring that those who have experienced inequities are central to creating solutions. Right, Hillside Park Buildings D and E. This is also a 4% low-income housing tax credit project. 164 units. It is sponsored by Related Northwest. It's located in Milwaukee in Clackamas County. And the request is 32,444,000 in lift. Let's see, so Related Northwest and Centro Cultural expect to provide marketing and leasing materials in English and Spanish. They have a robust marketing strategy laid out, including efforts to use translation services to expand marketing to other less served communities. Both Related Northwest and Centro Cultural have made furthering equity and racial justice key features of their operations, and they have made building cross-cultural partnerships a priority in their planning. All right, our next development is Olalla Meadows. It's 30 units sponsored by Northwest Coastal Housing, located in Toledo and Lincoln County. And the request is for $9,300,000 in lift. For this property, the property manager, Pinehurst Management, uses live translation software for both verbal and written translation needs. Marketing materials will be translated by culturally specific partners. And a focus is being placed on culturally relevant services for residents who are part of local Native nations. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, our next to consider is Phoenix Corner, 88 units. This is a 4% low-income housing tax credit project. It is 88 units sponsored by Stewardship Development and Oregon Human Development Corporation, located in Phoenix and Jackson County. And the request is $19,520,000 in lift. The Oregon Human Development Commission is dedicated to supporting Black, Indigenous, and other tenants of color, particularly within the farm worker community. Oregon Human Development Corporation provides a range of culturally specific services and programs to support these groups and in their housing and employment needs. Retro Electro is 16 units. It is sponsored by ASM9 LLC and Isaac's Room, located in Salem in Marion County, and the request is for $4,130,000 in lift. The sponsors expect the primary language spoken by the focus population to be English, though some prospective residents may speak Spanish, and they will provide leases and outreach materials in both languages. The property manager has Spanish-speaking staff and will assure that all documentation and materials are translated and made available in both languages, as is in line with their affirmative fair housing marketing plan. Sheridan Road is the next one to think about. Sheridan Road Manufactured Housing Community is 18 units. It's sponsored by 10,000 Doors LLC and is located in Sheridan in Yamhill County. The request is for $5,935,000 in lift. And one note, this is a new manufactured housing community. Sometimes we have preservation projects that we're bringing to Housing Stability Council. This is a brand new development. And so that's just a note how that makes it a little different from what we've seen more recently. The developer has an MOU with Yamhill Community Action Partnership, YCAP. YCAP will partner to refer as a referral partner and focuses on serving Hispanic and Latino communities. YCAP also provides translation and interpretation services And we'll partner with community-based and culturally specific organizations to provide services on a referral basis for tenants at the park. All right, the next project is the Coleman. It's 52 units, sponsored by Homes for Good. It's located in Eugene in Clackamas County, and it's requesting $13,680,000 in lift, as well as $2,540,000 in OHTC to attach to the permanent loan. Cornerstone has a history of strong partnerships with culturally specific organizations and has executed MOUs for the Lucy. Sorry, I got distracted. With NAACP, Centro Latino Americano, and the Catholic Community Services Immigrant Refugee Program. The resident services coordinator at the Lucy will be bilingual, and a certified peer support specialist will increase connections. Except that I think I missed the Coleman. I went to the wrong one. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me go back. And as a result, sorry, the Coleman is sponsored by Homes for Good. And it is partnering with NAACP, Plaza de Nuestra Comunidad, and other organizations, and has a strategic equity plan. In addition to that, Homes for Good has recently developed a hate and racial bias toolkit. The toolkit the toolkit's purpose is to document, track, and respond to instances of hate and racial bias in its programs. Tenant-facing materials will be translated into Spanish as needed by ERCO from Portland to assure that there is accurate and culturally responsive translations. All right, now to the Lucy. 36 units. It's sponsored by Cornerstone Community Housing. It's also in Eugene in Lane County, and the request is for $12,030,000 in lift. And I have already gone over this, but I'll say it again. So Cornerstone has a history of strong partnerships with culturally specific organizations and has executed MOUs for the Lucy with the NAACP, Centro Latino Americano, and the Catholic Community Services Immigrant Refugee Program. The resident services coordinator will be bilingual and a certified peer support specialist, which is hoped to increase the ability to connect with and offer services for Latinx populations. All right, if approved for funding today, the projects will receive a letter of intent from OHCS and will move to the financial eligibility step of the ORCA. Projects will have 6 months to complete this step and move to the commitment step. In financial eligibility, a detailed development budget and pro forma will be closely analyzed by the production team to ensure that each project meets financial and underwriting standards and to ensure that projects are leveraging debt and other resources that justify and support state investment. Final award amount for each project will be arrived at through the underwriting process in the financial eligibility step. All right. And now it's time for discussion and questions and consideration of the motion on page 15 of the packet.
All right, Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Chair Hall, and thank you, Amy, for the presentation. So when you first began the presentation, you had a breakdown of for-profit, nonprofit, and housing authorities. But when I look at the information, I can't tell which organization is what. So question about Hillside Park in Phoenix, are those nonprofits or for-profit developers?
Yep. Hillside Park is a for-profit developer, Related Northwest. And Phoenix Corner is a partnership between a for-profit developer and a nonprofit developer.
Okay. Thank you for that. And the reason for my question is that they seem to be leveraging a large amount of funding requests from the organization. And I guess I would think it should be flipped as far as expecting a housing authority or a nonprofit to want more resources. That's all.
I guess Councilmember Rogers, is it I'm trying to just want to make sure I understand the feedback. Is it that they should be that the
No,
state should provide different resources? Yeah, could you?
no, it's just an observation.
Yeah.
Yeah, just regarding the difference between funding requests. I mean, I understand that this particular motion is just supposed to be for the LIFT funding, but in the summary, you had the other types of funding that they were requesting. So just an observation on my part.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's probably what we are seeing there, because in the conduit issuance of the private activity bonds and the credit are those are debt. So that is where we're versus subsidy. So the LIFT resources serves as subsidy, and those are we actually structure it as a loan, but those are loans that are not regular monthly payments, and effectively our adopted program structure either has that due generally at 30 years or at 60 years. And in terms of that private activity bond, those are we issue bonds, and then we are a conduit. So we give those resources through a bank, and then the bank is the direct investor of those, and the owner developer is responsible for paying those back to the bank. So our action there is providing access to those. It's kind of like a lower interest rate debt, but those function differently. And I think that's probably also part of what you're seeing in those structures.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Mena.
Thank you, Chair Hall. And actually, it's a follow-up on that. And it's more from the perspective of now that, by approving the LIFT requests, we are in essence approving, although it will be a different action in the future, but we're in essence approving the bond and the LIHTC as well. I mean, because when it comes back, we have already acted on this initial action. Therefore, what is to say that we would not? So that was the point that I just wanted to make, is that in essence, we are approving the other funding as well.
You are, yeah, you're right. I think that we are, I was trying to explain the statutory place where we hook the approval to the need. And so I think in terms of our conduit resources and tax credits, those are likely to continue to flex and change a bit. And we need your approval on the actual final number as that is about to be issued. But you are correct, I think, Councilmember Mena, in terms of when we're bringing these recommendations, we are requesting approval for the GAP subsidy, the resources that we are committing, but that is within the whole financing stack. And I did also just, I think in as much as we have been in different places with the availability of private activity bonds, And those are, again, what is required to be in the project to generate the 4% tax credit, which the project is able to sell to get the equity investors, the private resources to help support the overall project in exchange for the federal tax credits. And, I think that we had gone through a pretty severe period where that was an incredibly oversubscribed resources. There were too many projects that had been including that in that financial structure. So we would have brought them to Housing Stability Council, or Metro would have brought their projects through their governance structure. And the approvals were for the gap funding, and they were all needing to use that private activity bond connector. And I think in as much as, again, our like statutory required approval pieces are a little bit different for those, we have tied those back together for our internal tracking, so that as we're making these reservations of the gap funding resources, we are also holding them from a resource availability. So we're ensuring that we're not putting projects into a situation where their plan and what we have approved is their project starting construction in 2026, and then we find there won't be sufficient resources to get that all fully financed at the same time. So I think those are linked, but I think to your point, I think you're right. This approval is symbolizing the structure that is acknowledged in the project write-up and in the presentation.
Councilmember DeFontorum.
Thank you, Chair Hall. So my question is, when we look through these, and I'm seeing like racial justice strategies, for example, and people are like, well, we're going to provide, culturally specific services. We're going to coordinate with, culturally specific organizations. Do we confirm that that's actually happening? Because it sounds nice, and I love that people aspire to that, but are they actually doing it? And especially if we're leaning into funding based on these statements, are they just statements, or do we confirm that this is actually like some form of a partnership? Or, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll kick us off, and Roberto and Amy, if you have other thoughts to add in. I think yes. And I think that it is a growing body of work that we're continuing to invest effort and energy into. But as we are, this first analysis and the evaluation of standards and impact assessment is looking at all of those partnerships, all of the approaches, and ensuring that there is intention and all of that, pieces to meet all of our standards. And then as they are moving forward through the rest of the financial underwriting and finalizing contracts and resources, we are asking, and we receive resource information about MOUs that are provided and committed to projects. We are ensuring that all of the places where those are resources are reflected. So those are everything is finalized, it is all resourced. And then as we get projects into operations, I think that is, I think part of where we've brought in the, equity and contracting work. I think also looking at how are we bringing into our compliance work more active tracking of that. We certainly have a lot of we have regular compliance efforts that are getting updates on all of the pieces and financial flow of projects and ensuring that they're doing it, but wanting to find more opportunities to really tie the unique things that a project indicated that they were taking on into that long-term compliance. So I think they do exist. We do confirm that they are implemented, and then are trying to do more around making sure that on a long-term basis, those are remain connected with the project again, so that it is not something that is seen as, or, anyway, that it continues to attach to the project. And I don't know, Roberto, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to add in there?
No, I didn't. Well, just reaffirming what you just said. I mean, at this stage, when we do have the information and documentation for a review to attest and express what we're saying there. And so, yes, throughout the that the process until before closing, we make sure that those remain in place, that they're not falling off. And with some of these projects in particular that are here being presented to the council today, I mean, we know some of the nonprofits and culture-specific organizations that are partners, co-developers. So we know, we could find out if they are not being involved now or in the future. And especially where they are co-developers, we're following that, how they're not only building their participation in the housing, but also, again, being in touch and contact with them.
Okay. Anything else from council? Questions, feedback? Are we at the point where we want to think about a motion and a vote?
Then make the motion to approve as requested.
Thank you. And we need a second now, please. Anybody? All you have to do is say second.
Second, Chair Hall.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call now,
Thank you,
please?
Chair Hall. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Chair Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
For the record, Councilmember Harris will be abstaining from this vote today.
Yeah, and just to echo that in my own words, I'm abstaining from this vote due to conflict of interest as my employer is involved in one of the projects under consideration.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Yay. Orca, oh, let's see. I believe now that we're done with transactions, we can formally close today's public hearing.
Yeah.
And then we move, so it's closed, and now we move to Orca monthly update.
Yes. Hi, everybody. So I just will just pause for a moment. I think the projects that you've just recommended, those are projects that are being moved forward into our production pipeline to continue doing their work probably at least 9 months faster than they would have been in any other year. And so from a place of wanting to ensure that the resources are getting to community and building housing to actually serve people, I think we're seeing the direct impact of that. And I think talked a bunch about that in the Orca monthly update this month as well. And I won't belabor you with a long conversation, but I did just want to take a minute, because I think one of our commitments is to ensure and that we are being as transparent and providing clear information and giving everybody that commitment to transparency, evolving our business processes and continuing to invest in that. And I think one of the things that the Orca does is it accepts applications and it funds projects, but it also creates a wait list. And I think that there has been, that's a journey. We didn't used to have a wait list. It really operates as a managed pipeline. So I think of the projects that are on that wait list as ones that are in our pipeline, and we are awaiting the moment when there's the right resources for those. And so part of what we are trying on now is just trying to get more deeper, clearer information externally about how all of that really, what are the mechanics of that? So I'm going to talk a little bit for a minute, and then I will show I think if I can do my screen sharing appropriately to be able to show the website, to be able to show you where all of this is contained. But first I just wanted to say, we are offering resources through the Orca. Each resource has specific eligibility. So is it eligible for new construction or rehabilitation or preservation? We also offer resources in Orca as a centralized application process for our capacity funds and pre-development and land acquisition and all of the different types of things that we are financing that is supporting, enabling, and fostering the expansion of affordable housing across the state. And that makes it complicated. I think, again, we're navigating the complexities behind the scenes so that there is aiming for an ease of process and clarity. I think previously where we would have had a NOFA and had to kind of piecemeal resources and kind of push them into, here's how we think it might work for folks. In the ORCA, we're making all resources available with their intricacies, and then doing that matchmaking to the projects. And so this is a visual of LIFT, which was, is our most significant gap funding resource. We received less resource investment than had been anticipated through the governor's recommended budget, but still significant investment, $450 million. And as we think about how that then starts to waterfall through our funding process, kind of built the graphic where we're saying, so we've held some portion back to do other things, which are places where we've talked about it, or the bills are directing us, or we have all of the reconciliation. It's really where have had over the last year evolved our 9% program to allow $3 million in LIFT per project. We have a new modular bill, which I think you'll probably hear about in the update later on legislative actions, that we are holding resources back if that is where those funds are used. And then we know with Housing Stability Council, we adopted our allocations that are applicable to LIFT and several other resources. So there's a 20% culturally specific organization set aside. So you can see that pulls it over to the side here. And then we have the resources that flow into the geographic regions. We have incorporated 4 regions. That was an update, as you recall, calling out and pulling out the truly rural areas to have a dedicated funding, and you have just approved several projects using those rural resources, which is really exciting. And so each of those pieces become different set-asides and different pins for where we want to prioritize spending the resources, and also the kinds of things that we can spend them on. And then on the other side, we have the projects coming through. And so we have projects, they submit their application. So again, a central application, single point of entry. Projects that are for development funding, which is what we're talking about here, are routed through impact assessment, where there's a different type of evaluation for capacity or land acquisition. Those are then routed to the appropriate place for that evaluation. So they are evaluated. We have adopted, remedy processes, as they're not wanting to kick a project out if they missed an answer on a question. So we have that now much more formalized and clear, so we can really make sure that we're doing that consistently. And then once a project is determined to have met the standards, it is placed on our pipeline wait list. And the order that they are on that wait list, so if you think of my graphic here on the right, is based on, 1 project, 2 project, 3 project, is based on when they submitted that application. And I think that is, as we implemented the ORCA, quickly realized how important having clarity on how we put those in there is, because it means is a project above or another if it's submitted on a different timeline. But then there's also all of those different eligibility buckets that we were talking about. So is it, so in here I've now color coded which region are these projects coming in for? Are they eligible for the culturally specific organization set aside? And then resource type, are they eligible for our primary resource, or are they not and need a different type of funding? And then are they eligible for that type of funding but could also use PSH, or could also use home, or could, so all of those real intricacies. So if you're thinking about where we get to the place of trying to match and connect the wait list to the resources, we're really doing, I can imagine it really like a waterfall. And if I were a graphic designer, maybe I could show you that. But it is a waterfall in terms of trying to identify, okay, so this project, project 13 on this list is 13. There's 12 projects above it, but it is the first project in this purple region. So that actually means we can go and try to match it with resources in that region. And so I think, as we are bringing the project recommendations to you today, we are also understanding that we make these first set of recommendations, that is finalized, then we kind of titrate that down. And so, where we would, for culturally specific organizations, we are first funding from the region. And so if the project would get funded from the region, we would use the resources from there. But if they're on the list and there aren't resources in the region, or they're not going to get selected from there, we would be able to move it forward with the resources dedicated to culturally specific organizations. And so we have done a bunch of work to try to be able to provide a lot more visibility to the inner mechanics of that. And again, I think it is really complicated. I think the team and I are very deliberate in trying to connect all of those dots, and it is a pretty complicated network. And I might need to restart my screen share to show. I will stop this and I will start a new one. So if we are just, and I put the link on the screen there, but I do want to just, for you and others, just to say where we are, if you're, I can start from our OHCS webpage. So if you're looking at our webpage and you go, there's an ORCA webpage down, if you scroll, and then we have the links to, the projects and community, but also this funding and set aside. So on this webpage, we have, lists of all of the projects at the different stages, the information about the available resources, and then also set asides. And so if I'm looking at the resources page, we have updated. That would be funny. Please note that I don't know why it's not opening. Funny. I had it open just a minute ago, so clearly it's not wanting to open right now. But so I will maybe pause that as my internet stops working. So we have in here, and I'm just going to pull it up elsewhere. I don't understand. Internet. Anyway, we have on there the full list, and I think part of what I was wanting to show you is that as we put the wait list information in there, we have I think it's the OHCS webpage that's not working, but we have included in the tracking of the actual, we have our wait list, and we have included a notes field that we will be updating on a monthly basis for each project to say, where is it? Not only what are all of the different specific identifiers and that are connected to each of those different places, right? So is it eligible in that region? Is it eligible within that set aside? What type of resource is it eligible for? And then also, are we under it, like, is it being evaluated for a future month? Are we, trying to titrate that down? And I think one of the places that we are next really excited to finalize is as we've, worked to finalize that work, the ORCA updates, and recognize that we needed to put a cap in for the size of projects we would fund with gap-only resources, and really be given the status of the level of financial investment from the legislature. Really, there were some project requests that were too large to be funded with the resources that we have available. And so we have provided those projects with the opportunity to be able to move over to the tax credit leverage list, retaining their position again based on our prior commitment for and to honor the process that got those projects on the wait list in the first place. And so when we are coming to you next month, we will be able to have the conclusions of those transitions to be able to understand and be sure that wherever possible, we are prioritizing projects that are ready, that are showing that they are able to do that work and are going to be able to demonstrate, can they be financeable within a tax credit leverage system or not. And so I think as we bring projects, again, starting this month, I think September and then into October, we expect that we will have the majority of all of those lift investments really secured to projects on the wait list. I think, and we'll have much more status updates for you. But again, trying to have the clarity and visibility for all of those mechanics so that there are is less. I think the concern is that there's an impression that that it's not intentional or that there's not a logic that feeds it. And I think there is a logic. We're trying to show a lot more of that as we go through our update processes. And so apologies for my internet challenge there, but I will I think land with that unless there's questions or discussion.
Chair Hall, looks like you.
Councilmember Lee. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you. I figured you were on mute. Thank you so much, Natasha, for the overview. And I just want to say I am not someone who adores data, and I adore having this level of information. It makes the discussions richer. It makes my understanding and learning deeper. And I know it's easy to look at a beautiful chart that is color coded, and the work that goes behind that is voluminous. So I just want to appreciate that seeing this type of data and information that's not just data for data's sake actually is helping us understand what's happening in the program. I just feel so excited about and appreciated. So kudos, Natasha, to you and the staff. Looking at the data now makes me think some things. I notice I know you're so sad now, Natasha. If the thing that we looked at with the color coding of all the projects 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I also noticed that in spite of our best efforts, we have 2 magenta, which I believe are the rural programs, and 1 yellow, which are the culturally specific programs. So I just want to notice that even as we're making these additional efforts and putting additional outreach out there, we're not doing significantly better than we have in the past. I mean, maybe we've doubled the number of rural ones, and I know we just passed some. But as we look at the wait list, and it makes me think about Councilmember DeFantorum's question earlier, which is all of those programs are going to tell us that they are doing various things related to racial justice and equity. And all of them are going to tell us that they're going to work hard to meet their MWESB goals. And yet that's still not resulting in, at least at this level viewpoint, right? A way for us to see how that's actually happening or manifesting in a way that has a focus in rural areas and a focus for culturally specific programs. And we've had this conversation a number of times about, is it enough to say you're in partnership or you've spoken with the local agency working within communities of color, or does money have to flow? Do resources have to be offered? Does compensation for the wisdom and expertise that these projects are relying upon at our request, is there compensation for that? So it makes me think all about that. The other piece that I want to bring up, and again, I realize these are very different programs, so no response needed to any of these. I'm opining. I know that the Tribal Housing Block Grant Program, which has done phenomenal work, didn't get, as many of our programs didn't get everything that they had requested for funding. And so I'm wondering, and this is maybe a request to you, Director Bell, if we could have a presentation about that program at some point in front of council, just to both hear, because it's a nationally recognized program now, to hear what that is, to make sure we know about it, and to understand what the implications are of the reduced funding from the legislature, and then to think about what, if anything, is opportunity with some of the ORCA funds and processes, specifically under the culturally specific organization set aside, if we can't start to look at ways for even more funding braiding and even more program, silo crossing, to try to really make sure that that program continues in a robust way as it was envisioned and has been working really well up to that point. And Natasha, I'm just thinking about one of your statements about we want to figure out, are there opportunities to invite projects to move to other sources of funding? And that for me is exactly what I would love for us to have a little conversation about, have a presentation, and just understand that while we want to set aside funds for tribal nations, for culturally specific, for rural, we also don't want it to be that that's the only place that those types of projects think about themselves, see themselves, and get funding through. So all of it is more thinking and thought partnership and opining, not anything where I feel like there needs to be a direct response, except for I'd love to have a schedule, some kind of a presentation to the council on the tribal nations housing piece. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Lee, I know you didn't ask for a response, but I do want to just leverage the opportunity because I think your observation that the rural projects on our wait list were submitted later than many others. And I think one, the updates to our rural definition is where we're able to actually have that acknowledged for those really truly rural communities, which is, I think, the place where it is so clear that the set aside is needed. And I think I would say the same for the culturally specific organizations. And so, and again, where we have been able to fund projects that are culturally specific organization led based on their just general waitlist placement, we are doing that from the regions. But that is where you have a culturally specific organization. And, and I think as I think about the, looking at what have we seen and navigated over the first year of ORCA. And I think, some of the patterns are not unexpected. The first applicants that come through were the for-profits, and then all of the nonprofits, and so now we have all activated throughout the pipeline. And I think we see that in the stats that Amy was providing, and the culturally specific organizations similarly. I think where are they in primary? That it is not the case that they're only funded through that CSO set aside. And I think then the place where we're wanting to, our standards and strategies for ensuring cultural responsiveness and partnerships and culturally specific efforts tied to all of our projects, I think that is ensuring that they are reflected over the whole, but that there is still a need for deliberate access for the culturally specific organizations. And so I think it is, in my mind, by continuing to invest in those deliberate set-asides, then we're building the foundation for potentially the need to not have them in the future, because they will be in equal mix on all of the thing. And maybe that is very aspirational, I think. And the other thing so the website started working. So I'm just gonna do this quick share because I do wanna just also highlight that when we're looking at our available resources, we do still have our set aside of our flexible development funding that is available and set aside for Native nations. We had previously adopted that. We have carried that through. And then as we're looking at, and this is the table I was referencing. So this is the literal wait list. And then we have kind of the status notes from each of those tracked down the side. And as I go, in this version of the graphic, we have included then the identifiers that connect to be able to explain. You can see, from that set aside, that project is getting funded. And then, TBD, we're working on the next round of those. And so that is from that place of transparency. I think the other thing we have linked there is our set asides document, which is talking through each of the funding sources and what are those flows. And so there is, again, it's complicated, but there is trying to put as much visibility to those. So when you're having the curious question, there is a foundation of information, and certainly we're also open to talking about them anytime. But I appreciate all of those comments.
And Chair Hall, maybe just very quickly, obviously, Councilmember Lee, even though you didn't pose a specific question that garnered a specific response, I think this was part of the hope of the type of conversation that we want to be able to make more room and space for beyond the line items of the agenda. So I appreciate the reflections. I appreciate the observations. There's so much I could say, but maybe I'll say a few things. So the first one is duly noted on a presentation on the tribal investments. That is one of the ones we will be probably spending a lot of time on with this body. One, because we're really excited. I think secondly, because each of the tribes who frankly did a lot of the legwork in thinking and design to help make sure that we can get these investments. We also want to make sure we do right by them. And so, yes, absolutely. The other thing more expansively that I would offer is between changes that we've made in Lyft home ownership, between the establishment of the ORCA, the tribal investments, I think the totality of those few examples, I think are real examples of where, from a programmatic perspective, from a policy and from a decision-making perspective, maybe it's blissfulness to say that the sky is the limit, but there is a really broad limit of what we can re-examine and probably will need to really re-examine. And I think in part of the re-examination, I think both, I think I will never have enough words to say how, proud I am of the team and Natasha and the way that they have been able to really expand to take in all the information and figure out where we've been wrong about things and have to go back and all of that. But I think one of the things that's been really great to see and for us to continue to practice is how we consume and take in feedback and then try to get it right and then go back. And folks, particularly in some of the last round of updates, there are folks, particularly a lot of rural leaders that pointed out very specific in terms of you need to go further, you need to go further, you need to try it again. That's not it. And have said, and we really are like, did we get there? Did we get there? And I'm sure there are some folks that say you need to go further and we'll keep working to go further in that. But that's the whole point of it. Right? That's the very point of it, is not to only have a new process that feels shiny or something that's quicker, but also where folks can say that it makes my work a little bit easier. It gives me the assurance I need, and it helps give me a space, my community a space to come in and feel like I have a real opportunity. And I think particularly as we think about investing in rural communities and we think about investing in tribes and upholding the integrity of consultation and sovereignty and thinking about culturally specific investments, I would suppose that will be the work that endures. That will be probably some of our prime areas of continuous learning. And what I would call us into as well is it's probably some of the core areas of where there is prime for opportunity, for some really big opportunity to think beyond what we've just said and done. And so I think because you've posed the question, particularly to the tribal investments, I think what I've also been thinking about, frankly, is how do we begin to position ourselves? And part of it is, I think the next strategic plan too is beyond the next 1 year or the next 2 years, but in the next 5 years. So where do we want to be in the next 5 years, both in terms of process, investment? To Natasha's points, we need set-asides now, like those are needed now. And how do we get to a place in which our system is more matured and we've invested in capacity and such to have the right combination of things where maybe we won't always need set-asides or always need carve-outs of things. And so no specific answer other than a commitment that will bring back the presentation. And I think there's a different set of questions, broader set of questions, I think that we should begin to be in dialogue in terms of where are we going over the next few years as a state beyond all the evolutions, because there's still a great deal of room for learning and fumbling and moving forward as well. So thank you for the reflections, and we look forward to continuing to dig into the work.
Okay, then. Are we at the close of this discussion and this set of agenda items? I believe so. We are a bit ahead of schedule, folks. We're scheduled for a break at 10:30, but it is, I think, the appropriate time to do it now. So let's recess the meeting, but reconvene promptly, please, at 11. I'm sorry, at 10:30. Okay, we'll see you then. You away from, yeah. Folks, if you can rejoin the virtual meeting room and we'll reconvene in another minute or two. Thanks so much. Let's reconvene our meeting of the Oregon Housing Stability Council, and we move ahead to our next scheduled agenda item, which is the presentation from the Housing Stabilization Division. Director Weber?
Good morning, Chair Hall, Director Bell, members of the council. My name is Liz Weber. I'm the director of the Housing Stabilization Division. And with me today is Jill Smith, who's the assistant director of the Energy Services section, David Kaufman, who is our Energy Assistance Program Coordinator, and Joy Aldrich, who is the Energy Services business analyst for the team. And we are here to provide an overview of the 2026 LIHEAP, or Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program State Plan, and also to share some good news coming out of legislative session about the Oregon Energy Assistance Program, or OEAP. And Jill will be leading us through this conversation, so I will hand things over to her.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, Chair Hall and council members. It's exciting to be here with you this morning. I appreciate this opportunity. It is time for the preparation and submission of the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, known as LIHEAP, annual plan to the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS. And we wanted to take this opportunity to brief you on our energy assistance programs, both LIHEAP and OEAP, which is our state ratepayer funded program, Oregon Energy Assistance Program, as Director Weber shared. We will highlight information on households served, as well as shared some of the changes being made in the state plan with you. Within the memo that you received in your packet, there is a link to the entire LIHEAP plan for your information and review. And Mr. Kaufman, who really is our energy assistance expert, is here just in case you may have technical questions about the program. I'm sure he can answer those. We change slides, please. Again, we're going to talk about both of our energy assistance programs with you. LIHEAP, the source of funding is federal. It is our largest program. The amount of funding that we receive has been between 40 and 50 million. It's a vital program. It does provide housing stabilization to low income households earning 60% or less of state median income. One thing that's really important about LIHEAP is it's fuel blind, and that means it can serve households whether they have wood heat, gas heat, electric heat. That is not the case with all of our programs. The priorities that Health and Human Services sets for LIHEAP administration is our elders, families with young children, households experiencing disabilities, and households who are low income who have a very high energy burden. The uses for LIHEAP include bill payment assistance, equipment repair and replacement, and energy education. This program, as well as OEAP, is administered by our Community Action Agency network. And then just to highlight OEAP and some of the differences between the two, OEAP is a ratepayer program. It's limited to ratepayers of PGE and Pacific Power. And because of that, it can only serve those regions covered by PGE and Pacific Power. The funding amount for OEAP since 2018 has been set at $20 million, which we receive annually to administer this program. We are thrilled to share that due to the passage of House Bill 3792, that amount was doubled to $40 million. So we anticipate receiving $40 million for OEAP to be administered, again, limited to PGE Pacific Power regions. It is also not fuel blind and is limited to electric assistance. Priorities for OEAP are households pending disconnection or already disconnected, and it's primarily used for bill payment assistance. One thing I want to point out that Mr. Kaufman regularly points out to me when we talk about this doubling of OEAP is it's very late in coming. There's been tremendous rate increases on the backs of very low income people, and it will not allow us to serve double the amount of households because the need is great. But the new legislation did add a requirement for ongoing assessments every 2 years and the ability for increases. So that's a really important part of that legislation. Next slide, please. We are excited to share some of the outcomes and demographics for the folks that the Community Action Agency network is serving with these programs. LIHEAP served 59,100 unique households in 2024. We're sharing 2024 information with you because we're still operating under a federal fiscal year that is not over until the end of September 2025. So we don't have those numbers yet. Restored services or prevented interruptions for 42,100 accounts. This program truly does provide housing stabilization. There's many households that are at risk of eviction that is presented because of this important vital program. The average payment for LIHEAP is $483 per household. That's an average. Some are much higher and some are lower. 40% of the households served by LIHEAP were elders, 15% had young children, and about 40% experienced disabilities. The majority of the payments, as you can see, were electric, but there's also wood, oil, natural gas, and propane payments being provided. Ethnicity and racial diversity is something that I think our community action agencies are doing pretty well at. As you can see, nearly 30% of the households served were Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish individuals, and nearly 20% were racially diverse households. And before I go on to OEAP, I just want to share with you some of the things that we're very concerned about. Is the fact that the president's current proposed budget did not fund LIHEAP. LIHEAP was zeroed out. There's been a lot of concern and urgency about this vital program. This program is really a staple for housing stabilization. It has been around a long time. It's fully spent down every year and is really necessary, especially with climate change that we're experiencing. We did get good news yesterday. The Senate Labor, Health and Human Services Committee marked up its version of fiscal year 26 appropriations bill. And they not only maintained, but increased LIHEAP funding by 20 million. This gives us hope. It still has to go before the House, who will propose its own funding level, and we won't know what that is until September. But again, it's a good sign. And LIHEAP has always had strong bipartisan support. Next slide, please. This slide tells you exactly what's going on with who we're serving and how we're serving folks with OEAP. As you can see, there were 32,850 unique households served, and we restored services or prevented disconnection for 19,500 accounts. The average payment, very similar to LIHEAP, $492 per household. 40% were elders, 20% of the households had young children, and almost 40% of the folks served experienced disabilities. About 2/3 went to PGE customers and 1/3 to Pacific Power. And again, our community action agencies are doing pretty good serving a diverse population. Over 30% of OEAP went to Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish individuals. Next slide, please. As I referenced in the beginning, we're using the opportunity of time for us to submit our state plan for the state of Oregon, which also serves as our application for LIHEAP for the state of Oregon to bring this update to you. And the state plan process, preparing for it, is continuous year-round. There are several meetings and gatherings that are attended that include the Community Action Agency partners, the utilities, and recipients of the program. Feedback is taken continually and ongoing. There is a public hearing process, and then we also are including briefing you and taking your comments as part of this engagement. Those comments are reviewed. The public hearing was actually just yesterday, and then September 2nd is our deadline for submission to Health and Human Services. While there are minimal changes to the state plan, we did want to highlight just a few. And again, if you want to go in depth, you have a link to the plan in your packet. One of the exciting changes is OHDC, the Oregon Human Development Commission. OHDC, I can't remember what the C stands for right now, is being added as an administering statewide agency. They have not previously administered LIHEAP. There are some definition clarifications for crisis and life-threatening crisis that were required by HHS, and a few other minor changes. And I think that wraps up what I hoped to share, and we would love to hear any questions that you may have.
Okay, council. Ball's in your court. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Thank you, Jill, for the presentation. Hello to everyone and to David Kaufman. It's been a little while since we've connected on this, and I'm happy to do it. Appreciate the briefing. So again, similar to the conversation of ORCA, I don't have anything like needing a response to, but I want to sort of provoke some discussion and thought for us. I'm curious, in the past, there's been this tension between particular community action partners. Some organizations have an approach that says giving a little bit of something to as many people as possible is better than nothing to some people, even though we know none of it's going to touch the actual income eligibility, versus an approach that says fully serving as many people as possible is actually a more effective use of the money, because you're offering somebody a small payment, the minimum payment, and their bill or past due bill is $1,000. That's not really getting them out of the hole, with the understanding that you could be offering several people $250,000, none of which might get them out of the hole, versus offering the $1,000 to the household to get them out of the hole. And I'm just curious about where that balance is and where that discussion is, and whether that's been, sort of resolved within the field of practice and with our community action partners. I would also say that I don't think we're doing a good job on serving people of color and communities of color. And, Jill and David and everyone, I've said this for many, many years. I would disagree, again, with no blame or shame, that we're doing a good job here. I'm curious to know why the OE numbers look a little better than the LIHEAP numbers. And there's a couple of things I could think about as why. Serving more households with children with OE, more and more of our children are people of color. I could do some of that breadcrumbing. It would be interesting at a certain point to hear back from the program what you think the differences are, because often those payments are going in lockstep in order to try to give more closely to meet the need. And I'm curious, as we're assessing what our performance is in serving communities of color, what the information is that we're measuring to, right? So if we even just want to measure to the percentage and number of people of color living in poverty who are income eligible for this program, what do our demographics look like in comparison to that? Or if we look at the demographics of elders, what's our performance there, and households with children? So I'm curious and interested to know what we're measuring ourselves against, not just, look, we did better, or the general population, we're kind of close to the percentage of the general population. I would really urge us to look at that. And then getting OHCS, not OHCS, the Oregon Corporation in as a partner has been a long time coming, since when I was involved with those programs. So I'm happy that that's the case. It's been way too long in coming. And it's, again, part of the challenge here. And I know we've talked about the federal versus the state. What's our plan, right? And I would like to see the plan that I know you all are thinking about, particularly as it pertains to racial justice and equity. And then in a foreshadowing, and this is probably again for Director Bell, this is money that is coming from taxpayers and going to shareholders at utility companies. That has always been an issue of concern for me. And I want us to continue, and I know we've been engaged in a number of conversations. I want us to continue to have some hard conversations with the utility companies about all of the rest of us putting in taxpayer dollars that are inadequate to meet the needs of our community members, our neighbors, because we're paying shareholders of utility companies, except for the public utilities, right? And I think we need to be in a policy level discussion with them about what's their contribution, other than allowing us to make payments on behalf of our neighbors and community. So again, nothing that needs to get responded to, just opining and offering some thinking as we start to get more, Director Bell, she said, out past a year, 2 years, 3 and 4. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments and questions, Councilmember Lee. I really appreciate them and welcome the opportunity to come back.
So Chair Hall, if I may, just for the sake of time, I do hear a call to action from some of the observations, particularly before finalizing the report. And so while we don't have to figure it out all today, I do think that there's an opportunity to, whether it's coming back in an actual meeting or doing the work in between meetings, to make sure that there's an opportunity to follow up to some of the specifics, and then also make sure that there is a transparency and accountability and a through line between the community feedback that we're receiving, some of what we heard today, and then how that it informs what we propose to put in the final version of the plan. Perfect. So thank you, Shiloah, for noting that as an action item.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Meehan.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience just within those two programs. You know, at the time that you have to utilize services to help you with your electric bill or your water bill or your wood or whatever, you're desperate. Your bill is out of control. It is way more than you can afford. These two services have helped me over the years many times, and many people I know. The scope of it changes. Lately, it seems like that they're not as readily available if you're not a senior, don't have very small children, or disabled. So the regular average Joe, which, you know, if you work a full-time job at minimum wage, you need to be making at least $33 and some change an hour to afford a two-bedroom apartment. The electricity is no different, neither is the water or sewer, garbage services here. So as the increases in the cost of producing energy and getting rid of waste and providing water go up in our community, these resources are just not, they're not enough to serve everyone. I didn't really realize about the shareholders, so I thank you, Councilmember Lee, for bringing that up. That kind of chaps my head, I must say, but overall, you know, these services have helped. Now, mind you, we are desperate people in desperate situations at that point, and that's kind of bullying or you know, like you get somebody at a weak moment and a weak place in their life, and then you come save them. In the bigger picture, it's not really saving them at all. So, but I do appreciate your presentation, and these services have helped me and other people I know across the community. Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Well, I guess that wraps this up. Any closing thoughts, next steps? Just so we stay engaged on this as a council.
Unless Director Weber has particular next steps that she wants to note, I think we've noted some clear next steps based on initial feedback that we'll make sure that we tend to. Liz, have I missed anything?
No, I agree. Took note of the follow-up that we anticipate providing on this program. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And now we're up to our 2025 legislative wrap-up and a look at implementation of everything the legislature did. And we've got Deputy Director Caleb Yant and Jill Gray, Director of Government Relations. Are you good folks ready to go here?
Absolutely, Chair Hall. Thank you. For the record, as Chair Hall said, my name is Caleb Yant. I'm the Deputy Director of the agency, and we're happy to be here to begin the conversation around everything that came out of the 2025 legislative session. I think there's three main purposes that we really have for our conversation today. So just kind of orienting how we intend to use our time. The first is around content. There was a memo that was provided to council members. It listed, it had a table on it. It listed all of the different projects that are with, you know, a brief summary of what those different bills, what those different investments plan to do. But our government relations team that worked every day, day in, day out for months and months in the 2025 legislative session is here to talk through that, to spend, you know, 20 or 30 minutes and go kind of investment or project by project, just to raise some visibility about what is the content there. So the first is content. The second is around process, to provide an overview for some of you who were here maybe 2 years or so ago. Some of this will sound a bit familiar, but how we organize our work. So the processes that we have created as an agency to make sure to understand where is it that the legislature has been really directive to say, fund this entity, fund this amount, do it in this way, just plus up the contract, or has said, here's an investment, design a program, and then to make sure that, so we have clarity on that. And then where we do have the ability to design the program, where we have that kind of autonomy, how do we do that in a way that really centers our values? How do we do that in a way that we create timelines and outcomes that frankly we could be counted on to deliver and to meet? So the second is little bit about process, and then the third purpose is really around conversation. So we'll go through a bit of the content, a bit of the process, and then to say, based off of that, here's what we anticipate bringing to the council and the type of engagement we anticipate having with the council, and allow you to say, yeah, but, or whatever the case may be. And so that way we could kind of co-develop the pipeline for the next couple years of conversations around what came out of the 2025 legislative session. So that's the kind of the way that we intend to orient our time. Jumping right in, and certainly the piece that I'll underscore is that last piece of the conversation. It does not have to go in that way. Again, our intention here is to make sure that the council understands and can really highlight areas that you all want to engage. So feel free to stop as we're going along. We don't have to save the conversation for the end. But I will hand it over to our government relations team to just dive right into the content.
All right. Thank you, Caleb. Again, my name is Jill Gray. I'm the Government Relations Manager here at OHCS. And as was already explained, we're going to go through some key policy items and investments that the legislature passed in the 2025 session. I will say it's a lot of content, but in your packets, there is a 2-page document that actually sums up nearly everything we're going to go through at the very end of your packet. It is a legislative session highlights document. With that, I think we'll get going with our slides. So Casey, if you will be so good to bring them up. And we'll get going. All right. And then Casey, can you take us to the next slide, please? To start with, I think it is probably everybody already knows this, but it was a hard session. And we've talked to our colleagues at other state agencies, legislative staff, and others who work at the Capitol, and everybody agrees that this wasn't one of the hardest sessions anybody can remember working. That being said, there were still plenty of key investments and policy items that the legislature passed. This slide here is giving a super brief snapshot, and then we will dive into deeper detail about what all this means. But just to get us started, OHCS received an overall budget, and that's all funds for all things. So that's operational supports, as well as bonding authority, as well as any of the direct programs of $3.47 billion. Some highlights from that budget include, in the second bullet point there, a little over $387 million for Housing Stabilization Division, $630 million for affordable rental housing, a little over $111 million for home ownership. And then for our disaster recovery and resiliency division, that division is funded mainly through federal dollars, and we're required to go into the legislature and ask for approval to spend those dollars. That's really what an expenditure limitation means. And the legislature said yes. So we have authority to spend $170 million of those federal funds over the next biennium. And again, brief snapshot. We will go into more detail about really what all of those numbers mean. But for now, Casey, if you can move on to the next slide. We're going to start with a few policy and at least one investment that are really agency-wide. And so the very first one on this slide is House Bill 5011, which was our agency's budget bill. You will see this bill number referenced throughout the slide deck here. And just remember that that was our agency budget bill. So there are lots of investments that the legislature made that are contained in that bill. The one I'm going to talk to you about on this slide is actually the Tribal Housing Fund. The legislature allocated $10 million to a tribal housing fund. And we've actually talked about this before at Housing Stability Council, that really the genesis of this request came from the tribes themselves, who said that what they really needed was a more flexible source of funds that they could use to meet the housing needs that they identified for themselves. And the legislature agreed and funded us with $10 million for this tribal housing fund. I heard earlier in this meeting that there will be an opportunity for the agency to come back to Housing Stability Council later and really go into much more detail about what that means. But for today, I'll just let everybody know that yes, we did receive $10 million for a tribal housing fund here at OHCS. The next item is Senate Bill 829. 829 is really in response to, and it was across the housing spectrum, all the way from affordable housing projects to shelters and everything in between, who have talked about the rising costs of insurance and that it's really on a trajectory that is unsustainable. And so legislators and others heard these concerns and passed House Bill 829. 829 is actually a bill that is being implemented by a sister state agency. It's being implemented by the Department of Consumer and Business Services, but the bill itself requires DCBS to work with us on setting up a program that would provide relief for affordable rental housing and shelters, everybody in the housing continuum of services with insurance premiums. And in fact, I believe just recently we were contacted by DCBS to get going on setting up what are the parameters for this program. That would include everything from who's eligible to what the actual reimbursement would be. So all of those questions are to be determined, but we are in some conversations already with DCBS about how to set up this new program. The legislature did fund this new program with a very modest investment of $2.5 million, but there is some relief that is coming in the very near future for insurance costs, and we just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. The last one on the slide is House Bill 3569, and this bill was passed and it now requires state agencies to invite legislators to rules advisory committees when that committee is talking about a program that was created or something happened because of the bill that was passed, and now we are required to invite the legislator who was the sponsor of that bill to the Rules Advisory Committee. I really left this bill on the slide just so that people are aware. If you are engaged with us in a Rules Advisory Committee or in Rules Engagement space, just know that there may be some additional faces at a Rules Advisory Committee in the future. And in fact, we'll talk a little bit more about administrative rules at the very end of the slide deck. But for now, those are the three items that were really agency-wide, and I'm going to pass it, I believe, to Tanisha.
Hi all, Tanisha Rosas, she, her pronouns. I work primarily with the Affordable Rental Housing Division as their government relations representative, but also focus on some of the local government things that are coming to the agency as well. So I'm going to go over the bills. The order they're in for the ARH side, I tried to match with Deputy Director Yant's projects to make it flow a little better for my brain. So hopefully that helps yours as well. So House Bill 2087 is a bill. It was the tax omnibus bill this session. So the originating part that mattered to us started in a different bill and then went into an omnibus bill with all of the big tax credit bills at the very end of session. So if you've seen this update for a bill. It has had many different bill numbers through this process, but the final bill was House Bill 2087, and it updated the Oregon Affordable Housing Tax Credit. What this did, it expanded the exemption for the pass-through requirement for the tax credit to those who are struggling, those properties that are struggling financially. This was in direct response to partners advocating in the legislature some of the struggles that they had, and them creating this creative outlet for the Oregon Affordable Housing Tax Credit, and the legislature agreed. It does a small additional expansion as well to the tax credit. So we'll be incorporating that and then watching it as all of those changes have happened in that bill. House Bill 3589 gave the agency $24 million. This is an additional $24 million. That is not a common thing from this legislative session, finding additional dollars, but Representative Marsh has a real passion for senior housing, and she was able to look throughout the state and find unutilized dollars, and that's where the $24 million came from for a senior housing initiative to help build more affordable rental housing for seniors. Senate Bill 48 was one of the governor's bills. It provided technical fixes to the Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund. It was a part of the same technical fix bill from the originating bill, the Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund, from Senate Bill 1537 in the 2024 legislative session. Also had things about HAPO and land use policy. Senate Bill 48 makes our changes for Merle, but also all of the other changes that relate to 1537 as well. So you'll see other agencies talking about it around Oregon based on their parts of that bill. Senate Bill 51 did two things. It provided $3.3 million to the Housing Development Center for some very specific items to help boost and help our housing providers, and it codified our preservation program in statute. Partners felt like if it was in statute, it would kind of concrete the importance of the preservation program and the initiative that the agency has been working really hard to accomplish, and so our partners wanted to put that in statute. Senate Bill 684 requires OHTS to provide long-term financing of residential housing and report on recommendations related to mixed income housing. Just like Jill said, there weren't a lot of dollars, and Senate Bill 684 started as a very creative concept from Senator Pham, where she was going to do a construction loan program, a revolving loan program, and then stand up long-term financing. There weren't the dollars this legislative session to stand that up. So she's asking us to report on it as we have more time, as dollars become available in the state. We're going to do a report to kind of highlight what could be done, and then also stand up the backbone of what would be important for our agency, but also to implement anything that she is able to pass in the future. Next slide. So there were a lot of bond bills, but I simplified them here. Senate Bill 5505, our Article 11Q bonds, we received $465 million for the LIFT program in ARH. And as we'll touch on later, there is a bill that sets aside part of that dollar. So it doesn't give us more LIFT dollars, it sets aside that LIFT dollar amount both on the ARH and the affordable rental housing side. But we received $465 million for LIFT for the affordable rental housing side. We received $80 million for permanent supportive housing, and then we received some additional dollars to help support PSH program improvement. So in 5011, we received $8 million for continuing to increase our continuing service level dollars that we give to the units that we are funding, because the dollars, just like everything else, they're a little more expensive than initially thought when we created the program. And so what this does is it allows cost improvements for those programs. So really excited that that got through the legislature. And then in House Bill 5006, which was the end of session bill, we received $2.5 million to increase the rental assistance slots, the number of those units that we can have, and that's directly tied to the amount of funding that we received for our PSH development in that Senate Bill 5505 line. So real excited about those PSH dollars coming in multiple little buckets. Next slide. So also House Bill 5006, it was the Christmas tree bill, if you so have it. It had a lot of different things in it. Everyone kind of monitors that. But another important thing that happened in that bill for OHCS is had a budget note, which is essentially a direction to the agency to do a thing that's relating to a lot of the bonds. And this one is for us to do another report to consider the feasibility of using Article 11Q bonds for preservation. Our advocates this legislative session worked very hard to make it clear what the need was for preservation and portfolio stabilization in the legislature. They provided data, had multiple meetings, and had some ideas about using a different source for preservation. And so the legislature asked us to do some research and write a report based on that. Relating to preservation, just like the OHTC bill, there were a lot of things for preservation the legislature tried to do, even though the lottery bonds just weren't in existence this session for the need of preservation. So we did get $50 million in lottery bonds for our preservation program, but they also did a couple other things. I'll skip one bill just to connect it. Senate Bill 973 and Senate Bill 32 are both different tools that are supposed to support the publicly supported process, the push process. So 973 changes some notice requirements, both so on residents and just community, and so people can know earlier that things will expire. And then Senate Bill 32 requires more information on our website to be available for those interested in preserving or watching the preservation of housing. So even though we didn't get our full ask for preservation, the legislature did do things to kind of acknowledge preservation is definitely a need in this state. And then I'll go back to House Bill 2964, which expands our pre-development program at OHS to help faith communities have access to those early project feasibility dollars when they're considering using their faith community land for housing development to see if it's even possible. And so excited to see where that happens through this legislative session. And I think I pass it to Casey.
That is correct, Tanisha. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Casey Houlihan, he, him pronouns. I'm a Legislative and Government Relations Coordinator here at OHCS, and I support the work of our Housing Stabilization Division. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the investments that we saw from the legislative session this past year before diving into some of the specific bills that are going to be impacting the work of our division. To start with, for the several different policy options packages that we did have for the Housing Stabilization Division, none were fully funded. And the rate at which some of them were funded varies quite a bit from program to program. To start, we had been seeking dollars for maintaining a statewide shelter system. This would really be creating a statewide shelter program, kind of unifying the independent efforts that have been occurring at the city and county level across the state. That also ties in with a policy bill that we will get into in a little bit more time. However, that was the closest to whole that we saw any of our specific policy options packages funded at. We received $204.9 million, which was about 93% or so of what we had been asking for to keep those programs sustained. Of that $204.9 million, $102 million of that will remain continued service level. The legislature did, however, include a sunset on those dollars for 2034. So that will give several future legislatures the opportunity to revisit that number as needed and push that sunset date further out if we have not fully resolved the issues by then. Similarly, some of the other areas where we did see much larger cuts, we did receive $50.3 million for rehousing. This represents approximately a 75% cut from what we had been hoping to see to maintain our existing service level for that. So that was a pretty severe area of reduction that we saw. Of that $50.3 million for the next biennium, 25.1 will also remain CSL, again, with that same sunset until 2034. Moving on to some of the other areas of investment that we saw, long-term rental assistance did receive $87.4 million, which was approximately 85% or so of what we had been asking for that division as well. That is one-time funding, so we did not receive any LTRA dollars that will be continued service level moving forward in this budget. And then similarly, this was one of the other areas that I know got a lot of attention for the severity of its cuts, but we did end up receiving a total of $44.6 million for eviction prevention dollars. That is about a 72 or 73% reduction from what we had been seeking to maintain that existing service level presently. Of that, $33.6 million does continue on as continued service level and with no sunset. This is actually the only area for policy options packages where we did not see that 2034 sunset attached to this. The reason that we're seeing different numbers here too between the 44.6 and the 33.6 is that House Bill 5011, our agency's budget bill, allocated 33.6 million for eviction prevention. However, because of the work of several of the advocates and folks who work in this space, they were able to rustle up an additional $11 million in House Bill 5006, the aforementioned Christmas tree bill, which did bring that total up to 44.6 before the legislative session had ended. Moving on to some of the specific policy bills that we did see moved this year that will impact some of our work. I did want to start off with probably the heaviest lift that we saw, and that is House Bill 3644. This is the policy bill that accompanies the shelter funding that we received as well in our agency budget bill. This largely is a set of recommendations that came out of the shelter work group that Representative Marsh and the governor's office and OHCS have been convening for the better part of last year. Many of those did contain some pretty meaningful and substantive policy recommendations for how to improve service delivery and program performance and optimization through data and technical assistance changes, through reviewing what we're funding, how we're funding those programs, and what really works best. We're trying to make sure that we can focus on putting our dollars towards the things that have proven to be very effective in these areas and that get the most results. That will be going into effect over the course of the next year. There will be a regional coordinator selection process that occurs between now and next May as well, as we begin to stand up that program into a unified statewide program, which should give us improved insight on areas where maybe service delivery needs to be improved or where we might be experiencing some gaps in those programs as well. I also wanted to move on to House Bill 3034. This was a relatively simple technical fix that our agency had actually spearheaded regarding the administration of the emergency housing account. Specifically, it had changed it such that OHCS as the agency would be the administrator of the account specifically, and it moved the Housing Stability Council into an advisory and oversight position so that they're able to still oversee and help design some of the policies that we have for how we use those specific programs and monies. I know that this was also referenced earlier as well in our energy services section, but House Bill 3792 is the bill that had increased the allocation for the Oregon Energy Assistance Program from 20 million to 40 million. Those are not general fund dollars. Again, just to clarify, those are ratepayer paid fees for higher income ratepayers that are used to subsidize the bill of lower income ratepayers as well. We're very pleased to see that that's something that we'll be able to use to help folks quite a bit throughout the course of this coming biennium. Additionally, we also had Senate Bill 465. This had affected our IDA program, or the Individual Development Account program, and it actually removed what had currently been an annual cap on the matching funds that folks were eligible to receive. Previously, it had been 6,000 and change that folks could receive on an annual basis. That annual cap has been removed and replaced with a $20,000 lifetime cap, which we had heard overwhelmingly from program participants is more in line with how folks are intending to use those dollars for large purchases, down payments of a home or a vehicle, things like that. So really trying to make sure that the program is tailored to be as effective as possible for the folks who are relying on it. Additionally, and I believe Tanisha mentioned this bill on the ARH side as well, but House Bill 2087, which touched on a lot of different areas of tax credits. This also does affect the IDA program, some of which is funded through tax credits as well. And that, I believe, changed the overall allocation for the IDA program from 7.5 million to 7.7. So we saw a marginal increase there. Senate Bill 814, this was a very narrowly crafted fix to address some discrepancies in eligibility for the Rental Assistance for Youth program, which serves folks that are under 25 years of age. Specifically, this was really spearheaded by the Oregon Youth Authority and some lack of clarity around the extent to which their program participants would be eligible to receive this rental assistance funding before actually having to go through the experience of becoming homeless. We wanted to ensure that those folks could receive these resources without having to go through that process first. And so this bill did accomplish that. And then lastly, I wanted to talk also briefly about Senate Bill 690, which was one of the omnibus pieces of legislation many of y'all might have saw. This started as a much bigger concept that did involve allocating some dollars towards our agencies to do some new and interesting work in that area to help prevent homelessness among families with children that are less than 12 months old. However, after the unfavorable May revenue forecast, it was pared back fairly substantially. And now it exists as a directive to our agency to prioritize whenever possible and at our discretion, families that have children that are less than 12 months old for our housing stabilization programs. There is also a component of this bill that provides an eviction moratorium component to households with children that are less than 12 months old for households that are also enrolled in the health-related social needs program as well. So That one does touch on a few different areas that are designed to make sure that we can keep families with especially small children in their homes. I believe that covers it for the housing stabilization side. So with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Nathan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Nathan Clark, he, him pronouns. I'm a legislative coordinator here on the GR team. I support our home ownership division. So this legislative session, home ownership division received a $111 million investment. The bulk of that being $100.9 million for local innovation and fast track program, our LIFT program for home ownership creation. That's one of our only requests that did not receive a cut. The rest of the 4 that are on this list are a reduced amount than our original ask, but we're still really excited that we're still being able to offer these programs and move forward over the next biennium. First, we've received $3.9 million for our down payment assistance lending program, which works with families through our next step first home programs up to 100% AMI to receive down payment assistance towards becoming homeowners. That did receive quite a large cut from about 7.8 million original ask. But we're still really excited to continue to offer this program and have that funding go right in the queue to support our families across the state. We received $2 million for foreclosure avoidance counseling, which works with our home ownership centers across the state to provide foreclosure avoidance counseling to those who are at the risk of being foreclosed upon. I believe last biennium we supported about 1,500 homes through this program, and so we're really excited to continue to operate that. $2.5 million for our manufactured park preservation. This is a newer program on the home ownership side. This had originally been under the Affordable Rental Housing Division, but it's moved over to be under the Manufactured Home and Marina Communities Resource Center. So everything related to manufactured homes, manufactured parks can now be under one roof. And I know the folks there on our homeowners team are really excited about this. This will be funding to support owners within a park, so those who own their manufactured homes or tenants be able to work as a co-op to buy their parks, and this money is to support them in that process. And then we received $2 million for our manufactured home replacement, which works to replace, decommission and replace very old and outdated manufactured homes and replace them with new ones for tenants across the state. We're expecting to help about 19 households again with that. Next slide, please. I want to talk about 3 bills that are impacting our home ownership division. The first one is House Bill 3144. This does 2 things. It prohibits new recorded instruments or governing documents of a planned community from banning the siting of manufactured dwellings or prefab structures, which is great. It is not retroactive, so those who already have a ban can still have that, but moving forward, new ones, you cannot ban siting of prefab or manufactured dwellings. And then the main part for MMCRC in the homeownership division is that we're extending the sunset until January 2nd, 2031 for our grants to low-income facility tenant dispute resolution services and for the Manufactured Home and Marina Communities Dispute Resolution Advisory Committee, which works with tenants in manufactured home parks and marinas across the state in legal disputes and provide mediation services to avoid having to move further along in the legal process. It's really great, and this is a really exciting to have another 6 years to continue to work on these services. House Bill 2698, we worked in partnership with Habitat for Humanity and other homeownership support partners across the state on this bill. So this establishes a statewide goal for homeownership, and we will be required to be posting a public dashboard, which will have our goal based off of House Bill 2698, which will go up by a couple percentage points every 5 years. So we'll be posting that goal, and then we'll be taking data from the American Community Survey and showing the results for homeownership, both in the aggregate and disaggregate, broken down by race across the state of Oregon. We're excited to work with our partners on that to continue to increase homeownership opportunities in the state. And then House Bill 3145, this has impacts for both homeownership and for the Affordable Rental Housing Division. But this essentially is $25 million of LIFT funding is set aside for modular development. So what we're doing is we're working with NOAA, the Network for Oregon Affordable Housing, on doing a task force to determine what options exist to do modular housing and do those pre-built ahead of time for both home ownership opportunities as well as affordable rentals. And so we'll work with them. OHCS will have a large role in this and creating what the recommendations look like and determining what exists in the state to provide that. And then that will be a report that will go to the legislature in, I believe, 2027. And then from that, we'll determine what that 25 million set aside is. At this time, both homeownership lift and ARH lift are setting aside 25 million for this purpose. But when those results come back, then we'll know how much from each side that 25 million will come through. So we're really excited about that item as well. We had a lot of support from our legislators and from Housing Chair Marsh on this as a way to really expedite the amount of units we can get built and provide both affordable rentals and homeownership opportunities for residents across the state. And with that, I believe I'm passing it back to Deputy Director Yant.
Actually, I think it comes back to me, and then we're going to go to Deputy Director Yant. So that, again, was very quick, lots of content about what happened during this session. And so people may be asking, what's next? So the first bullet point on there, Caleb is going to talk to you more about implementation. So hold for a moment, and we'll get into more detail about that. But I will move your eye to the second part of the slide that's talking about administrative rule implementation. So as is true for every session, this session is no exception, there will be policy items and budget items that have passed that need to have administrative rules with them. We have had administrative rules really elevated, both through some expectations from the governor's office as well as the legislature. So we're working really, really hard to make sure that all of our administrative rule implementation is to those standards, which includes transparency and a whole bunch of other items. If you would like to learn more about administrative rules, I'm going to drop the link to our administrative rules page here in chat in a moment. I don't do so well talking and putting something in chat at the same time. But on that page, you will find, on our administrative rules page, you will find information about administrative rule or rules advisory committees that are upcoming, as well as open comments for administrative rules that are currently open, as well as an interest form. So if anybody is interested in perhaps participating in a rules advisory committee, there is an opportunity on that webpage to fill out an interest form. So I'll get that link posted in the chat for everybody. But with that, I think we will turn it over to you, Deputy Director Yant.
Thank you so much. Director Gray, GR team, I'll pause because I see a hand.
I'll just step in. Chair Hall might be on mute. Just before you left the slide, I'm interested in hearing what, if any, role the council should play in this rules work, right? So I know it's technical, I know it's specific, and are there larger policy issues that the council could, should, would be engaged with in some way that would help support the technical work? And if not, also, happy to hear that. Will that information come back to us again, not at the technical level, but hey, this group of community members and staff came up with these things, and it's interesting policy area to come back and forth. So either in the front end, is there a role for the council? And if not, on the back end, will we hear the result of the work that you all are planning to do there? And I'm happy to wait if at the end of the last piece you're going to do, Deputy Director Yant, you want to address all questions at once, but I wanted to get there before the slide went away.
Yeah, no, wonderful. I will just say very quickly, Council Member Lee, I think the point of having, well, at least one of the primary points of the 25-27 conversation around implementation is for us to talk about the opportunities, at least the primary opportunities we see for council, but I think also to start a conversation around where the council desires to see themselves as well, particularly around rules. We have brought rules in different fits and starts, but I would not say that we have had a more collective conversation about rules that need to come to council and how they influence policy and implementation. So I think all of it is really open for what are the priorities and interests of the council that may be are not articulated in what we particularly will talk about. What are the questions that council members might have to make an informed decision? And then we can go back and sort of figure out how we want to organize ourselves, not just as an agency and staff, but also how we organize the next tranche of our time together to think more expansively. So we have not predefined that. We're hoping that this conversation is the starting place for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that maybe I would add to that, and maybe we can go just right to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about process, and I just want to say, this is not the end of the conversation. So this is a content-heavy conversation. We're going to give, I'll spend the next 3 or 4 minutes talking about process, and then another maybe 5 minutes on our just quick recommendations on from what you just saw. How do we think that we want to engage? What's our initial thinking on that? And so we could open that up for discussion here, and this is a living discussion, right? And so if you reflect afterwards and say, hey, I actually really want to think about this thing, or whatever the case may be. This process that I'm about to walk through, ultimately, what you see here is each one of these projects will be kind of an OpEx. It stands for operational excellence, but these are really our LEDGE implementation projects. And for each project, we're listing them as either full implementation, and this really ties a lot to the legislative intent behind it that I mentioned earlier. Where is it? Is it complex? Is it a new body of work? Do we create a program framework and then implement on that? And in general, the next slide will talk about definitions around engagement in general. If it's new money, we're creating a new program framework. What the council will see is discussions with you, and then at a later date, a decision around that framework. So that's generally what you will see. Or they're classified as plug and play. And that's where, either the budget report or the statutory language or the legislative intent is really, really clear and says, give this amount, give this, for example, a lot of the general fund in our housing stabilization team was around rehousing and shelter and eviction prevention. That was built on a maintenance of effort process that we did through the agency request budget, where our existing grantees said, this is what I would need to maintain. So the legislative intent there is we get the money out quickly based off that same formulaic breakdown. So we are trying to classify each project just for our collective understanding of, is it full implementation or is it plug and play based off of some of those characteristics. For all of the projects here, we have some consistent processes. And so one is vast majority have to go through procurement in some way, shape, or form, have to go through administrative making, Council Member Lee, to your point, and have some conversation with the council in some way, shape, or form, right? And so those are generally what we consider our critical path pipelines, and really what we try to do is back plan from them. And so part of internally what we're doing right now through last month, this month, and the next month is to co-create these plans together with back plan dates, so we could be counted on to meet those goals. And if we get behind or something gets off course, we understand that early and can take steps to mitigate or whatever the case may be. The second is around standards of excellence, and so this is to say, as project owners are creating their plans, we have a chance for leads in the different areas that are listed there. So equity and racial justice, community engagement, IT, research and reporting, like accounting systems, to make sure we're not just, we're using the systems that work for us, and communications to be able to review that plan to make sure the way we're doing that is in alignment with kind of the processes and expectations that we have. And then prioritization tiers, right? There's a long, you all just saw a laundry list of what came out of the 2025 session. And so we want to make sure that our teams understand, here's the stuff that we have to do first. And I think one of the things that's different about a lot of the investments that are in here that you all just saw is there's a high expectation that a lot of that money is under contract, getting into community right now, basically, right? For example, the shelter investments, that money is prioritized to make sure we don't lose shelter beds. And so that is, we need to make sure that the expectation is that money is available to be drawn by community partners, within the first month or two of the biennium. So for our teams, we try to say, what are the things we need to do first, tier 1, do next, tier 2, and do last, tier 3, to help inform, and from a portfolio perspective, the implementation plans that we create. And so that will all, and just quickly tying back, Councilmember Lee, to your comment, by the end of September, beginning of October, we will have an agency-wide blueprint. All of those critical path pipelines, so procurement, rules, and council, will be on that. And so one of the ways to think about how you can or want to engage in rules is it will be kind of a snapshot of that, and to have a sense of, well, when are we going to be engaging in rulemaking on all of these sorts of things? And then that could help time the conversations around what that engagement can, or what we want it to look like. So Casey, if you could go to the next slide. I'll go relatively quickly. So I'm going to go through, after this slide, I'll quickly do a snapshot of from a rental housing, from a home ownership, and from a housing stabilization division perspective, how we plan to engage with you all. I will note the date. In some cases, there's dates on there. In some cases, it's date range. I think in 1 or 2 cases, it might be a to be determined. We're doing this planning right now to come up with timelines that we could be counted on for. But really, I think the feedback that we want is, based on some of those process definitions and the legislative intent, this is how we plan to engage with you all, and that's where we want to hear feedback from you all. So generally, the definitions that the terms you'll see there is briefing. This is often not things where we will later be coming back to you all for a decision, but you as a council need to have some of the situational awareness on, and certainly that's a place for feedback and conversation and those sorts of things. But context, facts, implications, those sorts of things. So you'll see briefings, you'll see discussions. Again, often those discussions are, and not always, but often those are ahead of a decision. So we'll come 1 month, and have a discussion and get feedback, and a few months later with a recommendation and asking for a decision. Decisions, they're around program frameworks and those sorts of things. They're also the stuff that you all did earlier today around projects and some of the statutory requirements that the council has to move that. And some are listed as not applicable. This is those areas where the legislative intent is really, really clear. Often they are either plus-ups of ongoing existing programs. So for example, Nathan went through some of the home ownership, so the foreclosure avoidance counseling and the down payment assistance tied to flex lending, and some of these other ones that the legislative direction is continue to do it. This is more money to continue to do that. It doesn't mean that we can't roll that into updates, and certainly this is up for discussion, but some of those are not applicable, essentially that we're not planning to spend a bunch of time in the council reviewing those topics. So I'm almost done talking, I promise. And again, this is fairly content heavy, but the last few slides, I won't go through all of these. Casey, can you maybe advance to the next one? So again, this ties to the memo that the council has. It simplifies it a bit, and it kind of goes through each of the different projects and where we intend to, have discussions, decisions, briefings, some of those terms that we talked about there. So just looking at the clock, I don't intend to talk through the why too much on each of these unless that is something that the council wants to prioritize. I think it makes more sense for me to quickly show these and pause to get feedback or thoughts from the council. But again, happy to dive into some of the why behind this, whether that be today or in future conversations. So here's the list for affordable rental housing. Casey, you can just advance. In home ownership has a similar list. And then finally, the housing stabilization list is that final one. Again, these are in your memo, but just wanted to give a glimpse of that. And again, mostly around how we plan to engage. So I will pause there for questions, feedback, or more information you all want me to dive into.
Okay, council, any questions, feedback at this point? Excuse me. No, I guess we'll keep going then.
So Chair Hall, that is kind of the end of the presentation.
Okay.
And so, I think that just going through this, I want to maybe reiterate that this is not intended to be the end of the conversation. Again, a ton of content. And so I will kind of maybe defer to the council as far as if it would be helpful to come back, and talk about any of these if you all want to reflect and give us some feedback to direct some of the future conversations.
Okay.
I want to reiterate that because I know it's a lot of content and hard to digest in just a short amount of time.
Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Chair Hall. Thank you for the presentation and all the information. I know this is actually, we're just seeing the latest in what has been several years of hard work to get sort of the administrative practices and our procedures and things moving in this direction, while there are almost constantly things from the legislature or the governor saying, and here, do this now, and here, do this now. So I really appreciate sort of this through line of what do we need as an agency, regardless of what the programs are, and also to be responsive to these things that are coming at us. And I just want to circle back to Director Bell, your sort of invitation or comments earlier about yes to all of this, and how and where does the council come up a level of elevation that is high enough to address the policies that should hopefully drive the work that we just saw listed for staff in the community. And we've talked in the past, it's been short named as the statewide housing plan, right? And we know that we've got a re-up here. We've talked about this several times, and maybe it's not capital S wide housing plan. Maybe it is some of the discussions you were offering this morning as the way in which the council gets up one level of elevation. We're talking about the policy implications and making the connections to the larger agenda, the long-term agenda that frankly goes over legislative years and sessions, that then allows the space for staff to do the specific knowledge, right? We shouldn't be doing these specific conversations because we are not professional staff people working on these programs, knowing that. My ideal sort of thinking for us is that we're working with you in leadership to get the frame, and then within that frame, it leaves as much space for the staff to figure out how, in co-creation and collaboration with the community, to get the things done to get to the policy level. So I just wanted to reinforce, at least I thought I heard those things from you. I might be embellishing a little bit, Director Bell, and this presentation and information just makes me want to get there so much more quickly, because otherwise the council is not, I think, optimizing our impact and our influence in the work that's happening in the agency. And I know we all really want to get to that point. So I guess also, Chair Hall, this is just another expression of deep interest in us taking more time to work on things, working in person on some of these things, because we just can't do this on our monthly meetings. And I know that's part of what you've been thinking about with Director Bell. And so I just want to give another, yes, please, let's move here. And here's another example with this presentation of why we want to get to that place as quickly as possible. So thank you for the information. Thank you for the work. I look forward to seeing where it all lands.
Chair Hall, I see you're saying something, but you're on mute, so I'll maybe pause for a moment and let you do what you need to do.
Okay, sorry about that. Just wanted to see, want to thank Councilmember Lee for that feedback and see if there's anything else from the council right now. As we've been advised, if you need some time to digest this and give it some thoughtful consideration, certainly feel free to do that and reach out to staff with your questions. If not, let's see, Councilmember Mena.
I just wanted to echo everything that Councilmember Lee said. I couldn't have said it any better. Thanks.
So Chair Hall, if I might just sort
Yes.
of take a, oh, let me yield for just a moment. I saw Councilmember Meehan's hand go up.
Councilmember Meehan.
Man, that went up faster than I thought it was going to. I just wanted to say that, as Chair Hall mentioned, thank you for the presentation, Caleb, and to your team. That's great. I appreciate getting a rundown. It is a lot, and I do have some questions, and I do have some more research or more deep dive before I can really form what I'm thinking about or how I want to frame it or what I'm trying to say and do. So I will come back to you on that. So I just didn't want to not say anything.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Chair Hall, if I might just like take advantage of the commitment that we've had in the space to have some just open dialogue and sort of try to connect the things that I'm hearing as maybe a shared sense of priority and interest to some of the things that Caleb had forecasted in terms of what's going to come next, and leave it to the council to tell me where I'm off, wrong, or where I need to be redirected. So my initial instinct is it would be really, really helpful over the next month or so if we could get any grounding questions that any of the council members need to understand the information that's presented. And so to Councilmember Lee's point, we don't all need to have the same level of expertise in all the details, but I do want to make sure that we are softening the ground for preparing to have the higher policy conversations by ensuring folks have had the time to digest it, ask the questions that they want to ask, and where we can be then responsive to those requests. So for example, it is a norm as part of our function where council members will ask questions both in this space, but where there might be an interest in individual offline conversations for folks to go a little bit deeper before they come up. So that would be really helpful over the next month if council members can do that. And then we will do our best to make sure we are organizing the time and space to answer those questions. And then as a kind of a parallel and preparatory body of work, what we would be then doing as part of the council blueprint, as part of how we're going to organize implementation, is that would then allow us to come to council with an initial proposal, with an asterisk on initial proposal, of the primary areas of implementation where we really, really need the council because of the sort of broad opportunity that we have to shape the policy, because it is substantially new and different, and or we want to think about those areas of broad policy opportunity in connection to, frankly, a lot of the work that you all have been pushing us towards and the work that we've done, so that we can sort of take heed of those opportunities, not only in isolation of the thing that needs to get done, but in context of where we have wanted to build policy and as a way to connect all the opportunities and learnings that we've had. And so that would be how I would maybe see one way to sequence the work, where we can bring a proposal, and that proposal would identify the things that we want to dig a little bit deeper on. So for example, and this is just an example, if something is plug and play, maybe that's not where we're spending our expansive time, but we're keeping you apprised of it because you need to know about it, and it's maybe a topic of high public interest. And so we want to make sure you all have visibility to how that work is coming together. But maybe there's an area where it is completely brand new. And so we really want to talk about how we want to get there together from a broad policy perspective, and think about the opportunities that we want to take to build on something as we're implementing something. And then we would take that then as an opportunity where council can come back to say, yes, we agree with that list. Here's how we maybe want to sequence the topics coming. And so then we can then think about whether the way in which we get there together, whether that happens at a monthly meeting where we sort of shift from regular business and then we get into broad kind of policy conversations, where there are conversations like this where they're not perfectly articulated. We're going back and forth to kind of learn together and think about it. And then maybe where we need to also take heed in between and outside of the monthly meetings just to have some of those more expansive and early conversation. So that would be my proposal. And of course, I'm open to any feedback, both in this moment and outside of the meeting. But Caleb, have I missed anything that we wanted to get out of? And then if council has feedback to that proposal, I'm open to whatever's top of mind and what you want to see as next steps.
Well, I think we've got a path.
Okay.
Sounds like it.
Okay, so I think then maybe what I'll do, Caleb, if this sounds right, is we can work to get a summary of those next steps, just draft it out to make sure I've captured them accurately. Chair Hall, I'll look to you and other council members to say, yep, that's an accurate set of next steps based on what we've talked about. And then over the next 30 days or so, we'll look to hear from individual council members that maybe want to dig in to say, and really, council, it can be as simply as you said a thing and I don't even know what that is, and we'll make room to talk about it. Or is this thing the same thing as that thing? We just want to make sure there's enough grounding of information so that when we're going up to the big policy conversations, we've done our part to help you do your part in it. And then as a parallel, we'll be then working to put a proposal together of the topics that we believe we should be prioritizing our time in, while also keeping you abreast of the things that you need to know that are going to continue to be implemented. And so we'll take that as a next step to get at least initial summary out by next week.
Okay.
Oh, I see Councilmember Lee.
Oh, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Chair Hall, and thank you, Director Bell, for proposing this path forward. I think it makes a lot of sense. And this is really to us and my sibling council members. I am desperate for us to do some work in person. It is extremely hard to be in relationship and to have the kind of intimate, deep conversations that we need to have remotely and episodically, right? So I just, again, want to say I am willing to travel. I don't think when I say I want to be in person that means I think everybody comes to Portland or even that everybody comes to Salem. I am willing and open to make sure that travel is possible and appropriate for all of my sibling council members. And I am just desperate for us to do. And this work in particular, I think benefits from us being in physical space together. So I just want to put that out there. I know it's work for staff. I know it's additional expense. I know it's time away from our families and our professions. And I think it is required of us as a council. So I just want to put that out there one more time and to say, please, let's do it. Let's figure out that, what works best for most and do this as a part of the process that you've just identified, Director Bell.
Yeah, and I think it would be great to do that and to make it a hybrid option, because we know some folks, would have obstacles in traveling an extended distance, but I think with adequate notice, a lot of us could gather in person, and I think that would be positive. Any further thoughts from anyone at this point? Councilmember Meehan.
We're so quiet today. I just want to chime in and agree with Councilmember Lee and Chair Hall. Thank you for bringing that up, because I do agree completely. I just got back from leadership training over there in Denver, and I tell you, it really brings us just spending 4 hours together really brings us together, getting good stuff done. So I think just even this short time is good to do in person. And also I feel like when I look at the these documents and stuff, everything's kind of vague. It's a little vague, and so I'm hoping that some of these things we do a little more specific diving into, so I see what that means when you say more households. What are we talking about here? So I'm looking forward to some more conversations as well.
Yep, I appreciate that, Councilmember Meehan, and it is slightly intentionally vague today, but don't you worry, when we get into that policy conversations, it will not be vague. So I appreciate that, and duly noted on the hybrid. That feels and resonates is completely feasible, and we'll try to do some attempt at preemptively coordinating what that could look like, so that when we follow up with council, we can maybe look at a full picture, meaning proposal of policy and or topics that we want to dive into, why we've selected those over other particular topics, and then what a potential hybrid can look like, so that we can look at a full picture to that. So I'm hearing a shared interest and commitment to that. So we will look to follow up in the next week or so with a summary of this. And then we just encourage council to ask questions, whatever questions you might need to help make an informed decision. We're ready for that.
All right. Anything else? Well, folks, thank you for a very busy and productive morning. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, your weekend, and we'll see you in September. We're adjourned.